Hello team, I hope that you are well, and I am coming here with a webinar that is a continuation from a previous webinar that I have done. This webinar is called Macros per Meal, Effective Nutrient Timing and Distribution. First of all, we need to understand that nutrition is simple, but it can be complicated sometimes, especially when we have specific goals on aesthetic and performance for sport. And previously I have discussed the importance of micronutrients and macronutrients and how we should consider all of them as part of our nutrition when we are on a protocol of training like the one that we have here at Train with Stella. If you have not spent enough time trying to figure out your set of calories and macros, and if you haven't spent a good time practicing tracking on MyFitnessPal, maybe this webinar is not for you in a sense that I don't want you to overwhelm with the information. I don't want to overwhelm you with the information that I'm sharing, because you might not be ready to be absorbing this information, but there are some general guidelines in here that are still useful to you, even if you are only just starting on understanding macros and calories. So I have told you previously on the webinar that if you're not sure which was the webinar I'm talking about, I'm going to mention to you, I'm going to share it with you, so please let me know if you want to know the previous webinar. But on that webinar we covered the importance of all macronutrients and micronutrients, as I was just mentioning, and we also covered some examples as to how to distribute your meals, whether you train in the morning or at night. Now with this webinar we're just going to dig a lot deeper into, once you understand what set of calories works for you and what macro split has been working for you at the end of the day, we then look into how many meals a day we're going to be consuming. And before I deep into this, we need to understand that anyone that is going through a fitness journey and anyone that is wanting to change the body composition will need to have some shape of calorie control and macronutrient control as well, to be able to manipulate where we're going. If we don't know where we're starting, we certainly wouldn't know what changes we need to do in order to know where we're going. So for that reason is that I gave you all of you to experience, before giving you the macros per meal, I gave you to experience a while on a set of calories that I created for you with a macro split that I created for you. Now that set of calories and macro split that I give you at first sight is not a magic number. It's pretty much a number based on your goal, based on your age, your height, your weight, your activity levels, your NEAT, which is your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, your current body composition, meaning how much body fat you have, and what the goal that what is it that we wanting to go with your fitness goal. When I give you the first set of calories, you will see that very likely if you're a female, your calories are going to be changing anything between 1,450 up to 2,700, 3,000. We have some females like myself who train really hard. With a male, we should be looking at calories like from 1,650 up to 3,500, based again on the calories and your starting phase. Now, this set of calories is not unique to you in a sake of the calories per se. It's just an estimation based on knowledge that fitness coaches we have, because we have already helped a lot of people. So there are some markets that allow us to place people on 1,450 calories or 2,300. The number that I give you at first is not the big deal. The big deal is what happens when we do the follow-up to that number. If I give you an initial number and then it happens that you're gaining weight too fast, then we know that we overestimated the calories. If I give you an initial number and you lose weight too fast and you are out of energy, you really don't feel great, and you really start to struggle to stick to that plan because it's just too restrictive, then we know that we went on a massive deficit. And I don't like any of those approaches. I don't like when you eat too much, and I don't like when you eat too little. When you eat too much, it's not needed. Really, is just finding what is the amount of calories that you need for your goal. And when you eat too little, there is no need to put yourself through restrictions. But once we understand that set of calories, we then need to understand that those set of calories and macros, they have to be divided in meals on the day. And it's not that having small meals will make you lose fat faster, or it's also not that having just one meal a day will make you fasting longer, meaning that that all the superpowers of your body come out. No, it's not about that. It's about understanding the strategy that we are implementing for the long game. Meaning, if you are wanting to lose weight and you believe that you can really go for an extreme deficit, that is what you believe. But it makes a lot more sense if I give you into a very little deficit that allow you to have more outputs, more energy, more fidgeting, more moving around, more training, more recovery, better sleep, than if I just give you a calorie set that is really restricted, that is not going to give you enough energy to train, and that is going to give you to give up 3-4 weeks later because it's simply just not sustainable. Then when we have those sets of calories, as I was just saying, we're going to be dividing these in meals. So here is what I explained about the macronutrients and how we get into that. With experience, it's possible to generalize and adjust caloric macronutrients intake effectively, which is pretty much what I'm saying in here, is that the set of calories that I give you at first might not be unique to you, alright? But then what happens after that is unique to you based on the feedback that you give me. How many meals you want? When is it on that you like to train? How is your eating window? What is your sleep wait time? All of those things are going to be unique to you as well as the foods that you enjoy. Alright, so if we then focus on what I wanted to explain, if we then also take in consideration the previous nutrition sort of like markers or rules that we have within the different macronutrients, which are protein, carbohydrates, fats, fiber. We also have alcohol, but we don't include alcohol. If we also include the previous rules, where I basically have been explaining you that from protein, anyone that is on a high protein diet should be consuming anything between 30% or 35% of your total calorie intake coming from protein. From carbohydrates, especially if we do strength training and if we are into sports, we should be consuming anything from 30% to 40% of your carb intake, of your total calorie intake coming from carbs. Some people, like myself, on some days of my training, like biking or cycling, and leg days, I might even go higher than 40% to 45 and 50%, and athletes will need more than 50% percentage of carbohydrate intake. And the fats, although they have amazing properties, they're brilliant, they're super healthy and everything, when it comes to body composition, we try to limit the fats, not because they're gonna make us fat, but mainly just because the body has one main source of energy, fuel, that it prefers when it comes to training, and it's carbohydrates. Then we need the protein for muscle protein synthesis. We need the protein and the carbohydrates for muscle protein synthesis. Pretty much building muscle, repairing tissue. And the fats, we need them for hormonal purposes, and to absorb vitamins and nutrients that are within, that are only just soluble in the presence of fats. But when it comes to body composition, very likely I'm going to be limiting the fats to every single one of you, unique to you, depending on how advanced you are in the process, anything from 20% of your intake to 35% of your calorie intake. It only just makes sense that if your calories are restricted and if we are looking to aim for satiety, it makes sense to limit the fats, not because they will not give you satiety, but because your food portions are just going to be very small if the fats are high. And we also know that we need to have we must consume fiber for all the macronutrients as well, and to aid digestion and all the beautiful things that fiber does into our body and our bone density and all of the good things that fiber will bring into our bodies. But then again, this fiber is divided in fruits and veggies. Obviously, some complex carbs also are packed with fiber as well as fats. But in here, fiber, I'm referring for fiber as those that come within the fruits and the veggies, to make sure that we are introducing or we staying on top of all the macronutrients and micronutrients. So from the fiber, is known that females should be consuming anything between 200 to 400 grams of fruits a day. Male is anything between 300 to 500, and in females on veggies we should be consuming anything between 400 to 600 grams of raw veggies. It doesn't mean that you have to eat them raw, it just means that you weigh them when they are raw. And in order to have all of these rules, where we also know that from the 4 macronutrients, the one macronutrient that we really need to be really strict is the protein. Why? Because from all the macronutrients, the protein is the only one that has some markers that we have to achieve in order to use it for muscle protein synthesis. And is that in any given food portion, or in any given portion, if you are a female or a male, you should be consuming a minimum. If you are a female, you should be consuming a minimum of 20 grams per portion and a maximum of 45 grams per portion. If you are a male, you should be consuming a minimum of 30 grams per portion and 55 grams per portion. Okay? We also need to have them paired with carbohydrates if we want to achieve optimal muscle protein synthesis. Pretty much, if we want the body to use protein for what it's for, we don't need only just protein, we need the carbs. Boom. Yes, we need the carbs. For that reason is that I believe that the macronutrients and the carbs, as well as the fiber, will be the 3 main macronutrients that we will be playing with, and the fats, we just add them on depending on the meals of the day, and also just to make sure that our hormones are healthy and that we are absorbing the energy from the foods that require fats to be soluble or to be digested or to be absorbed or metabolized, like vitamin K, vitamin D, all of those. Okay? Now, when it comes to understanding how to organize, how many meals a day you want to have in the day, that is unique to you. There is a rule that says for muscle protein synthesis, you need minimum 3 intakes of protein per day. 3, not less than that. This is why if you just eat 2 meals a day, unfortunately you will not be achieving the minimum requirements for muscle protein synthesis. So 3 is the minimum, and then there is no maximum. That will depend on how you want to organize your day, and also how many calories you have available. If someone has 3,000 calories to be consumed, it's not the same way if someone just has 1,400. The 3,000 very likely is going to have to divide those meals in bigger numbers. Okay? But once we divide the meals, whether it's 3, 4, 5, which is pretty much this number of meals that I manage with almost everyone in here, once you have identified how many meals you want to have on your day, you then need to ask yourself 3 questions. Very, very simple. What am I doing? What was I doing before having this meal that I'm going to have right now? What would I be doing in the next 3 to 4 hours, 3 to 5 hours after the meal that I'm having right now? And the one question that obviously you want to ask yourself every day is, am I training today? And now, how is this going to make a big difference? For the following. Once we identify your eating windows, and whether you want to have 5 meals, 4 meals, or 3 meals like I am showing in here. Oh, sorry. I wish this would just pass, but it doesn't pass. Okay. Once we identify if you want to have 4 meals or 3, so 5 meals, 3 meals, or 4 meals, like I'm showing in here, we then, based on your unique preferences, how do we know? Based on what is your eating window? When is your breakfast? When is your last meal? That is your eating window. How many hours you have to eat in a day? Then we would like to divide every meal for you not to have a meal any longer than 4 or 5 hours after having eaten a meal. No more than 5 hours. And so with these constraints, and also knowing how many calories is your target, we then decide if you want to have 5, 4, or 3. Okay? So if I just go back into the previous page, if I just woke up, I know that I have been sleeping and that I'm about to have my breakfast. So there is not much that I need to consider what I was doing before that meal. I'm going to have my breakfast. Then after having my breakfast, I know that I'm going to have a meeting. I'm going to be on a meetings, and I'm going to be sitting down on my desk. I will have that in consideration to know what is it that I'm going to have on my breakfast, and then I will have that in consideration to know what is it that I'm going to be having on my next meal. If then after having my lunch, I know that after my lunch I'm going to have a meeting on 2 hours, but then after that I'm going to be heading to train. I know that I'm going to be relatively more active when after having lunch or after having finished the meetings, I'm going to head into training. So that should give me a cue that my nutrition on that lunch should be addressed slightly different. If then I come from training and I'm going to have my snack post-workout, that snack post-workout also is filling a purpose. And then if I'm going to have my last meal of the day, let's call it dinner, then I know that I also am going to be needing other macros because my day is done and I am prepping myself to sleep. So with that in mind, this is what I explained you. Pretty much, if I was going to have 5 meals, 4 meals, or 3 meals on the same macronutrients, I would much prefer, in my case, to have more meals, just because I prefer to have small portions, as I feel that it's easier for me to digest. There is other people that might prefer bigger portions because they feel that they have more satiety after having a big meal, and they might not have enough time on the day to feed the other meals that I'm asking you to feed. So that we have already discussed what is your best target of meals. Then when it comes to actually understanding how are the macros per meal, and asking yourself these questions that I'm asking you here, when it's super simple. Pretty much we know that in every meal we need to have a serving of protein that goes from 25 to the numbers that I've told you previously. Not less than that, and not more than that. We also know that carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, should be paired in every main meal to make sure that we have enough components for muscle protein synthesis. We then have 2 more things left in the game, which is fibers coming from veggies, fibers coming from fruits, and fats. And then what we need to know is that when it comes to fats, I much prefer to have the fats outside of training time. And when it comes to fibers, it's mainly coming from fruits. I much prefer to have the fruits around the time that we're going to be having some training. So if I was going to just simplify, how would I go around my meals, whether it's on a 5 meal day, 4 meal day, or 3 meal day, is that if I was going to be training after the scenario that I described previously, which is when you're going to have your breakfast, then you have meetings, then you have your lunch, then after that you go to train, then you come back from train, you have your snack, then you have more work, and then after that you have your dinner. If that was your scenario, or ideally you're going to go for a walk after you do somewhere in your day, if that was your scenario, what I would do is first of all identify, okay, my training is happening here, all right, in between my pre-workout meal and my lunch. In here, my training is happening here, in between my breakfast and my lunch. And in here, my training is happening here, in between my breakfast and my lunch. So if that is the case, I'm going to make sure that I have my fruits, my 200 to 400 grams of fruits around those 2 meals, pre-workout meal and lunch. On the second day, I'm going to have it on my breakfast and my dinner. You see? Blueberries, pineapple. And on the 3 meals day, I'm also going to have it on my breakfast and on my dinner. Right? And on my lunch. I'm going to have it on my breakfast and on my lunch, the fruits. Then if we go back to the 5 meal a day scenario, you will see that I will limit the fats on those meals that will go in between training time, and that they will have more healthy fats into the meals that are outside training time. And then you will also see that my sources of fiber on the meals outside training time will be mainly veggies, and that my sources of fibers on the meals around training time is going to be fruits. Yeah? On the 4 days a week, or the 4 meals a day, I'm going to have a mixture in between fruits and veggies in order to make sure that I have the requirements at the end of the day. And on the 3 meals a day, same principle applies for fiber. Now, what is different then after the fiber is going to be the portions per serving. This in here, I'm assuming that it's all under the same calorie. Obviously, you will see that on the 5 meal, the portions are going to be a lot smaller, but I prefer it this way because it doesn't leave me any opportunity to feel hungry or unprepared. But on the days that you have 3 meals a day, you will see that the portions of food are considerable, a lot more higher in terms of calories overall per meal. Now, what is the good or the cons, the pros and the cons? It doesn't really matter. It really is down to you. As I mentioned, there is some people that like bigger meals and they have no time to feed 5 meals on the day, and there are some people like me that prefer to have small intakes of calorie as my day goes, simply just because it allows me to really play with the way that I distribute my macronutrients. Now, the takeaway from this webinar, which is obviously very long, is for you to understand that you can make nutrition work in a way that fits to you, but there are some rules that we need to respect when it comes to wanting to achieve good body composition, but also overall health, which is the portions of protein per serving, the portions of carbs per serving, how much fats you should be consuming, and how many macronutrients in general you should be consuming on a daily basis, and then based on that we then decide how many meals we're going to have on the day. Because if your protein target is extremely high and you want to have 3 meals on the day, you might be able to fit 3 main meals, and we might have to just sort you out with a shake, just because the protein servings per meal is just going to be really high for your body to absorb it. Pretty much this is the essence of macros per meal, is asking yourself constantly those 3 questions that I have just mentioned. What have I done prior to this meal? What am I going to be doing after having done this meal? And am I training today, yes or no? And then based on that, you can divide your macros per meal as it best suits you. Bye bye.